Alright, so I got a few new goodies for the old Intruder. The fuel pump relay that goes right here finally came in, and I have a new back tire to put on. So I'll explain a little bit about how the back tire goes on without taking too much time. Fairly straightforward. And then I'll hook up the fuel pump relay, and I'll just tie up all this crazy temporary wiring I had here for the old fuel pump setup. I will leave it hooked up, but I'll just kind of tape it all up and tie it up and put this bike all together. And then we'll go for a test drive, and hopefully she runs like a dream and we can get on with our next bike trip. So for you Intruder guys wanting to change your own back tires, it looks kind of complicated, but it's not actually that bad. To take your tire off, on each side here you just have these chrome covers. Just pop that off with a screwdriver each side. Remove your axle nut, slide out your axle, and then there's these 3 bolts here. You just take the 3 nuts off, and then there's 2 bolts for your shock, or 2 nuts. You take your shock off, these 3 bolts, your axle. Then when you're pulling your tire out, you're going to notice that your brake caliper is in the way, and it seems like you need to unbolt your caliper. And my exhaust was in the way, and I thought I was going to have to remove my exhaust, but then I noticed that this here, look, it just slides in like that. It fits in there. So with your tire on, there's room to kind of get that out of the way, and it's a bit of a tight squeeze, but you can do it without start removing your caliper. And I've just noticed that my back brakes are pretty well shot. Dang it, I should have got some new ones. But anyways, removing the tire isn't that bad of a job, so I will do that at a bit of a later date. And that's about the instructions for the tire. You're going to want to put some grease in here when you put it back together, and that's really about it for changing your tire. It looks like it might be harder than a conventional chain drive or belt drive, but I think when you're actually doing it, it's actually easier because there's no adjustment. Your tire can't be crooked, you can't be too loose or too tight with your adjustment. It's all just bolts together and it goes into one spot, and that's it. So that's about it for that. And then the fuel pump relay up on the fender, it's just plug and play. So I'm going to get her all back together and show you how it all looks. And then we're going to take this thing for a test drive and see if we got her fixed. So thankfully, Suzuki invented an idiot-proof system here. I had this spacer flipped around backwards, and I was trying to get the axle in and went to that point and it was lined up and I just couldn't get it to come through. And I looked and I realized maybe that spacer was backwards, so then I spun it around, and sure enough the axle went right through. So that's just a good point to know there. So at least it's designed so you can't mess it up, which is nice. So far the hardest part of this project was getting this to line up. I ended up having to take and set the jack at the right height so that my tire was just sitting here with this lined up. And I had to grab the tire and spin it by hand while shoving in on this. And it took a bit of frigging around to get those splines to line up, and finally it popped. So another side note is, this end of the spline on the drive shaft, I put a nice light coat of grease on there. Put a coat of grease on the axle, on the bearings, and the spline inside here. It's just nice to have a nice thin coat of grease on everything. But I think the hard part's done, so I'm just going to keep bolting her together, and we'll see what we got when we're done. Okay, so it's back together. I got this all together, and just something to note, like I got this tire changed at the dealer, but always check your air pressure for the recommended for your bike. Like my bike, where this toolbox cover goes, has a chart, and it says single 29, 2 up 32. So I usually got lots of gear, so I set it to 32. They had it at almost 35, which is probably fine. But just to note, they're very busy, they could screw up, have not enough or too much air in there, so just check for yourself when you get a tire back from the dealer, the proper air pressure. And then I got that rat's nest of wires unhooked, and I just got it all bundled up in there. So I have the fuel pump wired back in to the factory harness, and the fuel pump relay, which is right here, is hooked back up again. And I'm pretty sure everything's all buttoned up. So I'm going to get her, put the seat and stuff back on here. And then next time you see me, I'll be out on the road and we'll be trying this thing out. And hopefully once and for all, it's fixed. So we can only hope. So it seems to be running halfway decently. Under real hard acceleration, it's got a bit of a stumble, but maybe that's just the way it is. I don't know. So there's the regulator rectifier relocation, and then it's my new back tire, and this jankety kind of quick built homemade foot peg here is quite comfortable, so I'm happy enough with that. And there's the old girl. So I'm going to call that a success for now, and I'm just going to run her and see how it is. Well, so interestingly enough, as soon as I stopped and talked a while ago, I took the bike and I just ran the crap out of it up and down this back road there, wide open for a while. And then when I fired it up to come home, it started running just perfectly. You could just hammer on the gas and there was no hesitation, nothing. It was just running beautifully. And it could go high beam, low beam, signal lights. Everything was working fine, the way it should be. So, as of now, when it was parked a few minutes ago, the thing runs flawless with the factory fuel pump and that new relay. And so, I guess fingers crossed, man. And we'll catch you on the next bike trip. Right on. So just so you guys know, there's more to me than just the Suzuki Intruder videos. I'm a lover of all things two wheels and anything with wheels and a motor, basically. So I have lots of videos planned that I want to make, and lots of things in store. So if you want to see more, if you've enjoyed anything you've seen so far, please subscribe and like and leave a comment on what you think. I know the cameramanship and the quality isn't too good so far, but I am learning and slowly getting better, so things are going to improve and there's going to be some cool things coming up. So I'd really appreciate it if you guys would subscribe. Thank you very much.